started. Again, this is Brian Keekly, facilitator with the Langdon Group for Department of Health and Welfare. This is the providers meeting for June 24th, 2019. Welcome, everybody. We'll go ahead and start out with introductions and then review the agenda, and then we'll jump in. So, and a reminder to everyone, please mute your phone if you're not speaking to reduce background noise. We have a number of people on this call, so only have your phone unmuted if you're speaking. So we'll go ahead and go around the room here in Boise. Again, my name is Brian Keekly.
Dory Valero with Medicaid. Catherine Coleman with Medicaid.
Randy Workman with Medicaid.
And Tiffany Kinsler with Medicaid.
Great. And who do we have on the line with us from NTM?
Ron Dunbar is here. Emilio Ramirez.
Great. Welcome, everybody. So we'll go through the stage and the introductions of providers. So the way we'll do the introductions will be the same way we'll do the... Actually, we'll go ahead and just give it a minute. Sounds like there's still some folks joining. So the way we'll do the introduction, the same way we'll ask that you participate. When we conclude an agenda topic, we will work through the stage by region, just a way to break up the comments and the input so that everybody's not speaking over each other. So again, please mute your phone if you're not speaking at the moment to reduce background noise. So first off, who's joining us? Okay, anybody else in Region 1? Region 2? Region 3?
Terry Lindenberg and Debbie Maxwell from Treasure Valley Transit. Elna Pino from Sprinter Shuttle Service.
Gary from Special Delivery.
LaDonna with Freedom Shuttle.
Cindy, do you have Amazon Music going?
I'm sorry, who was that?
You're off? Okay.
George Green Zone Transportation and Marjorie.
Thank you.
Julie Weir from Lemheim Ride.
Okay, anybody else in Region 3?
Sonia with LNH Transportation.
Okay, let's go to Region 4.
Jamie with Victory Medical Transport.
Region 6?
Slava Rutschuna with Idaho Transportation Company.
And Sergey Arutyunov with Idaho Transportation Company.
Carol with Lost River Transportation.
Okay, Region 7?
Chad and Tori with CT Transportation.
Jessica with Roadrunner Shuttle.
Jana with Tibbetts Transportation.
Rita with KDM Transportation.
Okay, anybody who joined us and has not introduced themselves, please do so and let us know where you're located.
Yeah, John and Mike, A to B Services, Region 5.
Q&A. Anybody else? Okay. Go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody. So we will review the agenda here, and then we'll jump into these items that we've identified, but we'll have opportunity at the end if there's anything that wasn't touched on with these agenda items that we may want to discuss. So the first few here are reports from MTM. One will be an overview of work and trip statistics. One will be new noteworthy accomplishments. We'll provide a scorecards LD process. Update on ETDs further out than 8 days. Update on work from home call center staffing. Reveal update pilot project plan and provider training. And then we'll turn it to the Medicaid group for provider rate increase updates. And then again, we'll check in and determine if there's any other items anyone would like to discuss as part of this call. Time allows, and the way we'll handle each of these agenda items is this. I'll ask for the report from either MTM or Medicaid, and then I'll work through the state by region to ask for any comment, just to control the discussion. So please wait till we've kind of given your geographic footprint before providing comment. Sounds like one more person joined us. Could you introduce yourself? So one more person joined us. Could you introduce yourself?
Darren Talley, Whitetail.
Thank you. Okay, so again, a reminder, please mute your phone if you're not speaking. There's a lot of us on the phone, and background noise for everything from the other people in your office to heavy breathing can be distracting. So please remember to mute your phone. Let's jump into this. MTM, overview of work and trip stats.
Good morning, all. This is Ron. So I wanted to share with you some of our stats from April and May. Those of us who were on the previous advisory committee meeting last Monday, it's just a repeat of that same data and detail. So first off, again, thank you all for the service you provide to those who desperately need it. So going over some of those numbers, in April, you as a transportation provider group assisted in completing 120,413 trips. That was for a number of 7,467 unique utilizers. So a very small group creating a large number of trips that you all have performed for MTM and the Medicaid population. Also during the month of April, there were a total of 15,924 calls that were answered by the MTM contact center staff. So a lot of work around to get those 120,000 trips scheduled. So of those 120,413 trips in April, that relates to a 99.92% complaint-free transport percentage for April. So kudos all around to the transportation provider group and the MTM team helping to mitigate and manage those complaints. Going into May, we actually saw a decrease in the total number of users from the 7,467 down to 7,450. However, they took nearly 2,000 more trips in May for a total of 122,245 trips. So again, appreciate the work that you all do to help move these folks from point A to point B to point C in a safe, timely, and efficient manner. Along those same lines there was 15,552 calls that were managed by the call center group in order to get to those 122,000 trips. As it relates to complaints, there was just an uptick of 3 complaints to 122 total complaints for the month of May, and that also equates to a 99.92% complaint-free transport percentage. So again, thank you all for the work that you do out there for the folks and clientele that you serve. It's not always easy, But again, I'm sure that if they could thank you individually, they would certainly do that as well. Are there any questions and call statistics?
Yes, doesn't Al know? We would like to know how many of those trips were done by Lyft.
I'll have to pull that number for you individually, Elna. I'll say it's probably less than 1%.
Okay.
I'll look that up while we're on the call here and get that over to you, by the way. Before they get off the call today. So if there's no other questions about that, just an update on the work from home call center staffing. When last we met, we were at a solid 12 members of that team. Now we're at 20 members dedicated solely to the Idaho plan and helping to service strictly Idaho calls. So most of those folks have come over from previous brokers. Some of them have not. But hopefully we'll see as they become more ingrained into the ways and makings of an NEMT call, we'll continue to see any errors that are created be mitigated, as well as just improve the overall call center experience for our facilities, caregivers, and also members alike. So again, we've gone from 12 up to a total of 20. They do span the state. We don't have very many up in northern Idaho yet, simply because we haven't had very many applicants from northern Idaho who would come down for the 3 weeks of training here into Boise. So we'll continue to work on getting more and more by those calls.
Hey, Ron,
Were there
we're
any
gonna
questions?
just want to take a really quick break. Sorry to interrupt. Matt Wimmer joined us and he wanted to provide some information, and then we'll jump back to your discussion. He just has a few minutes.
Sure.
Hey, and sorry to interrupt everybody, but I know everybody's really interested in the rate increases for 7-1, and I just wanted to give you all a quick update. So we've been working through quite a lot over the last week. It's been a lot of back and forth between myself and the administrator at Division of Purchasing and our team and the folks at Purchasing and MTM and so that's all been kind of working fast and furious in the background to make that happen for 7-1. So we're working this week on getting the contract amendment finalized. We're working on details of how the rate increase will roll out. But we heard you guys loud and clear when we met with some provider representatives a couple, 3 weeks back. And what we're working on doing is just doing a transparent, here's an increase based on the new funding. Not anything that would be, where there's individual negotiations taking place or anything like that, but simply just a flat increase. And we want to do that in a way that's really transparent so that you can see that, yes, the amount that was appropriated, 80% of that amount is going to the providers. So I don't have a whole lot more to share with you than that. We will be sending out, as soon as we have details on it, some more information to the entire provider group. But I did want to just kind of take a couple minutes to pop in and give you that news and follow up from there. But you should be getting more information here shortly. And you should be seeing that take effect on July 1. So just wanted to let you all know that. And I'll just pause and see if folks have questions that I might be able to answer.
Yeah, so let's see if we'll kind of break this up to half of the state. So district or regions 1 through 4. So everybody, Boise West and North. Any feedback from that or questions?
This is Leah from KDS Transportation. I guess I don't understand, Matt, exactly what you're saying about the increase. Are now all the transportation companies going to be making the same amount? Since I know that we haven't been, because we have to set our own rate.
No, we'll be going, so we've got, for July 1, we've got right around 6.8 million. 80% of that will be going to providers in the form of rate increases, based off of what you're getting today. We're not setting a flat rate for doing anything, that it'd be that kind of, going in that direction right now. We're just going off of what your rate is, an increase from that rate today, that will get us to spending all of that money projected for the next year.
Okay, I understand. Thank
Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Matt, this is Darren Talley with Whitetail. That rate increase for providers should be roughly a 28% increase on top of their current contract, correct?
So the 28% is based on, so that 6.8 million is roughly a 28% increase over the past, based on past period and based on projections for the future period. So, very, very roughly, but if it doesn't equal out to precisely 28%, no one should be surprised, because there's a lot of variability across the state, and there's a lot of, difference there. But, so ballpark, that's kind of an estimate, but that's across the entire system. So the details of it may differ a little bit. The one thing that will be totally clear and that we will be able to show is that 80% of that 6.8 million is going to providers in the form of rate increases. So I hope that helps, but I don't want people to say, hey, wait a minute, mine is not quite 28%, and so, something's wrong here. We want to be able to show that all the money that we committed to providers is going to providers. So I want to be totally clear on that. But the 28% number, if it isn't precisely 20, people should feel like something's wrong, or that, that there's something untoward happening.
Let's see if anybody in Eastern Idaho has any questions for Matt while we have this time. So east of Boise, regions 4, 5, 6, 5, 6, and 7.
So this is Elmo. So how will we know what the rate increases are? NTM going to handle that? And what is happening with the 20%? Because the senators were actually arguing this increase for the providers. And that was said in several emails as well.
So we have been completely clear from the beginning that part of that rate increase does need to be able to support the broker. Brokers paying out all the money they're getting today to providers, like literally all of it, with nothing left over to operate on. That's based on the last 6 months. And so, we've been really clear about that from the get-go, that this wasn't just absolutely 100% would go to providers, that there would need to be some to support the broker as well. But what will happen as far as rate increases is later on in the week, MTM will be communicating with you about what your rate increase will be.
This is
Matt,
Tori
this
from CT. Sorry, Darren. I was just going to say that
I'll ask it.
MTM still has money because we don't get paid all of our money. They're not giving us all the money that they get. Go ahead, Darren.
And Tori, I think that's a separate question. I mean, yes, there are claims that get denied, and yes, and that is, I don't want to downplay it. There are some problems there that need to be solved, and I'm not saying there aren't. But what is true is that MTM is paid, the amount that we pay to MTM has paid out all of that and more over the past. So,
But they also came in with that. They got the contract because they bid so low. So isn't that their problem for bidding so low? And why does that become our problem?
So I'm not going to get into that discussion right now. I think we could have a long discussion about that. But I really just wanted to share some information on the rate increase, and I'm not sure it would be real productive to get into that discussion I'm really just trying to, let everybody know that yes, we're going to be seeing some rate increase information coming out soon, and yes, that's happening.
Matt, this is Slava Luciano Boydad, Side of Transportation. I have a question about percentage. Basically, let's say that's roughly 28%. So for those who are on a low pay scale, like we are, we only get 28%, which is everybody happy about rate increase. But what happened if it's low as we are, we're going to get smaller amount than somebody else who is getting paid, let's say, $2-3 more for the same transport. So basically, poor get poorer and richer get richer. So basically, that scale is going to shift it even more. Is there anything else that this could be done to kind of bring the rates to the standards for everybody?
So, Slava, I'm not sure if I can answer your question right now. I think that's more of a longer-term discussion. I think our main concern right now is just getting all that money out to everybody so that, we know there's a need. We've worked on this for quite a while. At this point, we just want to make sure that everything gets out and that everybody sees this in a way that's really transparent. I think longer term, talking about things like setting a different way of how folks are paid, like maybe a statewide rate, totally rather than individual rate. That's a whole different conversation. But I think the danger is that if we move too far back towards that, we run the risk of doing that in a way that's not transparent to everybody, and that possibly creates more problems than it solves. So I totally hear what you're saying about just give a percentage rate increase. Some people paid less, some people paid more, and that there's potentially some challenges there with that. But at least at the end of the day, everybody sees more money and an increase in their rate. So and that's really what we want to see happen.
Right. But maybe future discussion. I understand that on the July 1st it's not going to happen, but something to think about in the future. And maybe I'm a lousy negotiator because I wasn't able to negotiate with MTM and stand on a low level. But I would like at some point to have MTM to step in and make it more the rate not so much discriminatory toward one and kind of maybe level off because we're performing the same job and we would like to getting paid pretty much the same, at least because there's no bidding war and we kind of be on the same level. It's actually not more to you, but more to MTM.
I think the conversation about what is fair reimbursement will absolutely continue. There's roles for the state to play. There's roles for MTM to play, and I think there's definitely some potential for improvement. But it is a longer-term discussion, but it is a discussion that will continue.
And we can flag that for future discussion on these calls. So any other questions for Matt? He only has a few minutes here, so we want to.
Yes, this is Terry with Treasure Valley Transit. Just for clarification, in the negotiation process with Department of Health and Welfare and MTM, who was it that actually determined the rate increases per provider?
I really can't answer that question for you, Terry, right now. But I think the one thing that we were really clear on is that 80% of that $6.8 million is done in a transparent way. And so we'll have more details out to you soon, or MTM will have more details out to you soon to be more accurate. But I can't answer that question for you today.
Matt, this is Sergey with Idaho Transportation. I do have a question about something else, in that area, but something else. So 80% goes to providers, 20% go to MTM, increase goes to MTM. What about the DDA waiver and A&D waiver? We operated on the same rates for those groups, and 80 plus 20 equal 100%. how the Medicaid or Department of Health and Welfare is planning to allocate the increase for the DDA waiver part of the our contract with Medicaid.
This is all strictly around brokerage business. The non-medical transportation that's done through the waivers is not impacted by this today. I think that's an important question, though. Something that we'll have to come back around to.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Matt, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, and I'm sorry you guys couldn't be here a bit longer. It's kind of end of our fiscal year, and things are crazy busy around here. But I did just want to check in with you a little bit and share some of the information I had, and also saying thank you to every one of you for your patience as we've worked through this. None of this is completely easy, and I do appreciate all of your work and your the services that you provide for all the people that we all serve. So thank you.
Matt, can I just ask, can we have a meeting as soon as you've got this clarified and stuff so that we can have a meeting soon when you have more time and you can explain things more clearly to us?
So, Elna, I think I'm going to be the wrong person to be the one that's explaining things because I'm not down in the details and the weeds. The folks with MCM and the team that we have working on this at Medicaid are. And yeah, we can, but to answer your question, yes, we can definitely have some further conversation. I can be part of that to answer the things that I can answer. And I think once we've got this communication out, people will probably have some questions, similar to what you're asking, Terry, and we'll probably have more answers that'll be helpful. So I think, once we get that out, once we kind of get past the immediate challenge of making sure that all of you are getting the rate increase, then we can come back around and talk about it and hopefully answer questions to everyone's satisfaction.
Thank you.
Great.
So, as Matt's leaving the room, but we still have folks here from Medicaid. If we're on this agenda topic, if there are other questions, we can capture those now, and if we're unable to provide answers, we'll capture them to follow up on. So, is there additional questions or clarifications that people have specific to this rate increase topic? Okay, let's go and jump back in. So, Ron, sorry we kind of cut you off there, but you were you spoke about your overview of work trips and trip stats, and I believe concluded that, and then you jumped down to the your staffing, and that's sort of where we cut you off. So if there's anything else to say there, please pick up on that. I think you mentioned that you had 20 new staff in Idaho, mostly in southwest Idaho. Anything else to add?
No, nothing there. We've again just increased that call center staffing to take more of these trips in a more specialized manner than having them deal with several different plans and create any confusion or concern there. So I wanted to get back to Elna's question about Lyft usage. In the month of April, of the 120,413 trips, 470 of those trips were used, or we used Lyft for 0.39% utilization. And in May, that number was 554 out of the 122,000 trips for 0.45% utilization there. So one other piece, and then I'll turn over to Emilio and the logistics team to give you some more updates. Reveal, we're looking to still run a pilot project here with a few providers. We'd like to get providers from each category. Essentially, and what I mean by category is perhaps a 1 or 2 vehicle operation, a mid-size operation. We did get a couple of emails back from a couple folks interested in doing that. More details will come there. At this point, Reveal would not roll out in Idaho until quarter number 4. And again, we want to make sure that the software update doesn't create more issues. I know that we've all dealt with our share of those software problems, system issues, and we don't want to put something out there that's going to create more strain or administrative burden on the team. So more details to come on that as we get closer to that pilot project startup. We'll obviously be providing a full provider training on how that product looks, what it can and can't do, and field any questions about Reveal at that time. So did anybody have any other questions about the call center staffing, the lift numbers, or the Reveal project plan?
How about anybody in Eastern Idaho, east of Boise?
Yes. So when you assign a trip to a Lyft driver, because we get a lot of people telling us that Lyft is being sent to pick them up, do you first contact the providers or do you go straight to Lyft?
So transportation provider is always going to be the first option because they're in the network and that's their designation. If we're unable to secure a transportation provider, whether it be time of day, date, you name it, Lyft is always the provider of last resort.
We are using currently from MTM, or is that just a mobile phone app or a tablet app?
It's just going to serve as an additional option, Elna. So it's not going to replace the software or the programming that's in place right now.
So that is actually not going to make anything easier on us on the computer, doing like billing and stuff like that?
The Reveal integration is going to be utilized. It's not going to replace what's going on now. There's absolutely no obligation for a transportation provider to utilize Reveal. So the system right now is how the system is designed and built. Those Reveal software integrations and upgrades will certainly make what's currently out there much easier to use, but it's not going to be a both feet in replacement.
So just another question. We sometimes have really slow system, and sometimes our card doesn't come up or the drivers doesn't come up. So if you implement the Reveal system, is it going to be connected to the MTM platform, and how is that going to affect the speed then? And then also the other question is, you've been started in Idaho, and it's still not fully functional. That's been a long time.
Yep. So again, I'm not an IT person. I can't speak to how fast or how slow or how much different it would affect and apply to the system. Obviously, they're going to be integrated because if, for example, you do use that application on a mobile device, it's going to have to be able to talk to the claims processing and other credentialing information that's currently in the system. How the technical details behind it, unfortunately, my apologies, I don't know how that works. And the reason for the long rollout of this particular software is to make sure it doesn't create more issues than it helps to absolve. So we have it running in Florida. We have it running in our operation in Rhode Island. We have a portion of the state of Wisconsin on Reveal, as well as in Ohio. We're not going to roll it out to Idaho and create more issues.
So Ron, this is Dory, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if the providers opt in to use Reveal, it will help resolve some of the administrative overhead issues that they've been bringing up, because it will basically automatically, once they complete the trip, there will be nothing additional for them to have to do on that side of it?
Correct. All that information will be captured electronically on the device or mobile phone. Again, I know there's some consternation in the device, but everything captured right there. It's all HIPAA compliant. It protects the driver. It protects the member, the facility. It's simply basically an electronic form of a trip log. All the details are there. It allows for tracking of that particular vehicle real time, And again, as soon as they complete a transport, whether it's an A leg, B leg, C leg, once that particular leg is signed off on and submitted via that mobile device, it moves right through the adjudication process. There's no additional documents. There's no scanning and sending in trip logs. It's all captured electronically.
Great, thank you, Ron and Dory. So let's chat. Anybody else, Eastern Idaho? So specific to staffing and Reveal, anybody else have any questions or comments for Northern Idaho down to Boise?
I just have a question, another question. Do they have a list of the ATMs companies that are integrated, like MediRoutes and so forth?
Eleanor, this is Emilio. Yeah, there is. So if you send us, if you're using one particularly, you can send that to us, and we'll see if there's already an API integration available. But there are several current RSD solutions, routing scheduling, dispatch solutions out there that will integrate with Reveal.
Thank you.
This is Terry. Is that
We can hear Gary.
we
Go
have?
ahead, Gary.
My question was, this is Terry with Treasure Valley Transit. Does that new integration go with Route Match?
You know, I'm not sure, Terry. We can check on that for you to see if that's something that would be able to be integrated with Route Match. I can follow back up with you on that.
Thank you.
Sure.
George with Green Zone Transportation, about the Reveal software app. What are some of the reviews that other states that you mentioned? What are the reviews percentage on them? What is there any?
So you're asking how easy it is to utilize the software? You know, we've had positive.
Yeah.
Yep. So we've had positive reviews from providers, as we indicated, from the smallest down, up to the largest of providers in those markets. Ease of use really is the biggest, component to that they're really satisfied with, and just being able to integrate what you're currently doing into that, and then a much smoother and easier claims process when it comes time to. There's been a very positive review from those pilot markets. GPS tracking, which is also something that's been beneficial from families and facilities that have indicated that to us, that it's nice that now a feature and that's available to be able to see where the trip is and where the vehicle is at any given time.
Is there a charge to this new system?
At this time, I'm not entirely sure what those rates will be. Once we have additional information to see what, there's different levels of Reveal that will be available to the provider group. As we get closer to that time, we'll definitely have some more discussion and provide additional information on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, I don't know if that's a question on the call or somebody doesn't have their phone on mute. Okay, anybody else? Go to Idaho or Boise.
This is Cleta from KDS. On that rebill, is that something that we have to sign up for?
Yeah, so as Ron indicated, Cleta, this isn't something that you're obligated to take on, but it is something, yes, that you would have to opt into to have that feature available, to have that software available to you.
I see. So how do we do that?
Yep. Yeah. So at this time, we're still going through and determining the pilot program that we'll be implementing to the state. But as we get closer to that time, we'll send out additional information.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So once you've opted in, can you opt out again?
Yeah, at this point, I don't know those details specifically on that, as we haven't gone through, what that's going to look like. As far as if you're asking if there's any type of contract or commitment for any certain period of time, I don't want to misspeak and say that there is or isn't. So we'd have to get back to you on that to make sure.
So then if we sign up now and ask that we want to be part of it, since nobody knows, we'll be able to get out of it then if we don't want to.
So if you want to be part of the pilot program, and then you decide that that's not something you would like to do, then at that point you'd be able to opt out of that once that pilot is completed. But again, I would, there would be more details to come later on what that's specifically going to look like and what benefit you'll get from that. But yeah, as far as opting out of the pilot, once you're complete, then yes, that would be an option.
So on this program, I know you said you're not in IT and stuff, but say for instance you go pick up somebody on this and you forget to get a signature, because sometimes things just go really fast on the road and things happen. What will happen then? So you're not going to get paid for the trip?
The same process that's in place now would be the process that would be in place with Reveal. That wouldn't change. So the signature is still required at the time of transport. That would not be altered with the implementation of this software. That's part of the trip process.
Thank you. I need to interject. So it sounds like there's a lot more to come on this. There's a lot of questions, but this is still a pilot phase. There's a lot more to go. We have one comment. Tiffany wants to provide some more input here, and then we're going to move on to our last few agenda.
Thanks, everybody. This is Tiffany. I just wanted to interject here how important the pilot is. We have heard over and over from our advocacy groups in Idaho that they would really like for us to go to an all GPS-based type of system, just because of the primary people that are that are actually using the services. So I would strongly encourage you, get a hold of Ron or Emilio or whomever, and let's try out this system so that we can see, see what our options are and what the benefits are. It's one thing to hear from other states, but we would like to know in Idaho how this is going to benefit our providers. So please seriously consider it and understand here in the state of Idaho to actually go to an all GPS-based system. So.
I have a quick question. This is Marjorie with Green Zone Transportation. In regards to Reveal, it sounds like it's very similar to MediRoute in regards to the GPS and the tracking and the signatures and the timestamps that you're getting. The only difference is that MTM has access and the people that we're transporting have access to view that. Is that correct?
As far as those details, Marjorie, I don't know specifically, but yeah, I mean, there's going to be differences, but it's very similar to that software that you're to MediRoute. As far as the granular details to that level, I don't have specifics on that yet. But yeah, it'll be very similar in the way that MediRoute currently works.
Thank you.
So maybe on the next meeting, can they get somebody that knows about this stuff on there so that we can all talk about it?
Yep, that's currently the plan, Elna, as we progress through this and we get closer to that time frame. We will have in-depth training for all providers, and then some experts on the ground here that will be able to give us some additional information on that.
I'm actually asking before they're gonna roll it in, so that we know what we're signing up for the pilot and what we are signing up. Now we just know it's something. We don't really know what it is and how it's gonna work. Think about that?
Well, and that's the purpose of the pilot, right? And at that time, once we have that, then we would have, again, some additional information with some folks that are experts in using Reveal. But as far as an additional meeting before that time, we can take that back and discuss it further internally. But as of right now, we're looking to have the pilot plan in place. That way we can work through all of these things and we can ask questions as we go along and get input from you guys on what you're seeing out there as you're using it daily. But again, as being part of the pilot, there's no commitment at that point that you have to use this program once it's rolled out. But again, we'll definitely be.
Ellen, we captured that there's an interest in that, and we'll include that in the notes. And then as we move forward with our future calls, we can determine how best to make sure we're meeting everybody's needs and preparing everybody for the rollout. Let's go ahead and move on with the agenda. And some of these, MTM, you may have touched on, but I'll just let through them. I don't know for sure. So we have new noteworthy accomplishments. Is there anything else to provide there that we haven't already discussed?
Yep, so this is Emilio. So we've added a couple new providers into the network, specifically in the Treasure Valley area and also in northern Idaho. So RideSafe and Opal Transportation are the two providers that we've added in the Treasure Valley with 3 additional vehicles, medical transport in northern Idaho to assist us as well. In addition to that, we've got some sole source companies that are coming on in central Idaho, where they've had some trouble, with, well, not trouble, but just adding additional resources to ensure we have adequate coverage, to ensure we have all trips covered. I did also want to send a kudos to all the providers who assisted us during the closure of TRIPTA. Specifically CT Transportation, Roland Shuttle, Tibbetts, ABC Express, En Route, Roadrunner Shuttle. I hope I'm not missing anyone. If I am, it's not intentionally. But we definitely want to thank you guys for stepping up and assisting us during that time. We also did move Victory Medical Transportation to Eastern Idaho as well, so a special thank you to them as well for helping us out there. So those are the new noteworthy accomplishments in the program. Again, we continue to recruit additional providers to ensure we have adequate coverage for all trips out there. Any questions on that?
Anybody from northern Idaho down into Boise? Anybody in Eastern Idaho have any questions regarding new providers? The provider scorecards and LD process.
This is Emilio again. So you all should have received, or should have started receiving your provider scorecards, as well as during the month of May, or actually the beginning of this month, received some information on the LD process, specifically what LDs would have looked like for May. And I know there was quite a few questions and concerns regarding what that is going to look like and what that process is. So you all should have received additional communication from me as well, specifically around how to refute any liquidated damage that's out there, a pre-assessment refutal, and then also how you can dispute the LD once it's been assessed. So hopefully you guys all have that information in front of you or readily available to view that at any time. If there are any additional questions, you can certainly reach out to your respective provider management rep individually or myself, and we'll be happy to walk you through that process further.
Great. Thanks. Any questions from Eastern Idaho, west of Boise, on scorecards and LD process?
So you're going to assess it and take the money first and then let us complain about it?
Nope, no. So there's a process in place that allows you to see. So it's a pre-assessment first. The pre-assessment allows you the opportunity to say, this is before the LD is assessed, allows you the opportunity to say, okay, so you have that opportunity to let us know what you could potentially see that goes against what we're sending to you. And then if that opportunity is not taken, or if the LD is still assessed, you still have an additional opportunity once that LD has been assessed to you to then dispute or refute that charge.
So I have a question about this. We have low rates, so does people over in Idaho Falls and Pocatello and so forth. You charge us $10 if we are late to a client. The client has been seen, we have fulfilled the trip. No matter what the reason is, sometimes it's a minute or two, and we are late. Some of the trips we get $5 for our first mile, and some of the trips are only 1 mile. You want to take $10 out of our account for a $5 trip? So that doesn't sound right to me. And also the $25 if there was a no-show. So actually we are starting to sponsor MTM on this. And I know we have been over and over on this liquidated damages, but this is not a fair system. I also would like to know how many complaints were there, how many late trips, how many missed trips were there, and that would be good for us to know how that happened. Because every time we are doing, why do you feel like if we are good providers and pushing the bar to do a good job and keep on going, to drag us by the hair and drag us down morally?
So I'm going to jump in here, Elma, Ron. Let me jump in here and just say this is Tiffany from the department, that we have been committed to raising the bar for our providers for a long, long time. We know you guys are great providers. We know that you work really, really hard for us. But the use of liquidated damages is very typical in the industry. And when MTM came to Idaho, we reviewed the liquidated damages schedule that they have, and we approved that schedule. Also, because of that need to continue to raise the bar for our participants and their safety, we have added liquidated damages into MTM's contract. So this is not a matter of just, getting liquidated damages from the providers. It really is an overall effort to raise the professionalism in Idaho, to raise the bar on quality, and to, have a fabulous network that we can always, leave our very vulnerable people in your hands. So this is not something that an MTM came in. It was their decision alone. The state has supported the use of liquidated damages. It is just one other tool in that toolbox for us.
Stephanie, thank you. This is Slava Ruchuna, Puidadis Transportation. We understand that everybody is trying to strive to get the job. But at this point in time, we're dealing with so many issues related to MTM mistakes that it will be very highly inappropriate for MTM to impose any kind of liquidation taxes. Those mistakes directly related to our performance. Like, for example, we have cases when MTM representatives call us last minute and ask to add new rides, and in those instances, in those situations when we are not able to accommodate those rides and told that to MTM that we cannot do the ride, those transports still were added to our photos and without our knowledge. So basically, that would be, no show for us. So I think there's so many, in those cases, it would like that simply that we did not show up to pick up the participants when it actually was a mistake on the MTM. And those, it's only one example. I'm not going to go into the many of those, but there are situations when it's putting us in the gray area that we are responsible to pay the fines or liquidate the damages when it's not our problems. And we're spending so much time already to educate and prove to everyone that we are not, it's not our doing. And now, in addition to trying to clear our names with the clients, we're going to get fined. I think that's inappropriate. So, and I would like to know who is responsible for those mistakes, because we're spending lots of time trying to fix those mistakes. And in my opinion, right now, it's 3 to 4 hours of my general manager's time to fix those mistakes. And I could give you a lot of examples when those liquidated damages is not related to our doing, but the MTM problems and their mistakes with the system or personnel.
So I think that was a good point that you made.
George,
let's go ahead and let Tiffany respond to that question, that comment.
I do agree, and that's a good point that you've made. And just as, we also allow MTM to refute liquidated damage that we assess against them, MTM will do that with you guys. We will be watching the process very, very closely. This is not about laying blame in the wrong spot. It's not about, making everything the provider's fault. That's for absolute certain. I think Ron or Emilio, you guys could probably answer the last minute trip information or concern better than I can, because you are in the middle of that and I'm not. So,
George with Green Zone Transportation. So, liquidated in the same vicinity, but I'm going to get charged 10 to I don't know how many dollars. Why approve that? Why help MTM out when I'm not going to make the money when I'm actually getting money taken away? Or I could not approve it, but that means that I turn my phone off between 10 and 2 o'clock and not accept any more trips between those times. And it's not helping you guys out. It's not going to help me out. My whole aspect of being in business is to provide services to these members because they need help. They have no other way of mainly members are disabled, wheelchairs, and dialysis. And these people have to make it to the appointment. And they understand that I'm 10, 15 minutes late. They understand this. We're being docked and charged for something that we're helping members out for. I mean, I'm trying to help you guys out by taking more trips, adding drivers, which I've added 2 more drivers to my fleet with vans, and now I'm thinking of letting them go, all because of liquidated damages that we cannot accommodate. Keep going with this. There's no. I can't make money if you guys are going to charge me.
So George, this is Tiffany, and like I said, I'm certainly not the expert on this, but I think what you are talking about is maybe a late pickup. You're somewhere in that hour before the appointment, but they're not actually getting to their appointment late. I think that's different from somebody who's actually getting to their appointment late. But Ron or Emilio, could you jump in and help me here on that?
Yep. So exactly as you stated, Tiffany, that is correct. So if you're picking somebody up, let's say they have an appointment at 9 o'clock, and you normally pick them up at 8:40, but today you pick them up at 8:50. Well, as long as you get them there by the appointment time, that's where the LDs come into effect. It's not looking at the time that you pick them up. It's simply looking at, did you get them to their appointment on time? So if there is an issue there where now they're going to be 10 to 15 minutes late and the facility's fine with it and the member's fine with it. We simply need to have that time updated in the system so the participant can call in to make that change, the facility can call in to make that change to the appointment time to ensure that it's not showing that you dropped them off late.
Okay, so that means more work for me to, when I get done at the end of the day, go change it in the system to, instead of showing 8:30, 9 o'clock drop off, that means I dropped them off at 9:10.
Well, at that point, like I said, George, that can be put onto the member or the facility to make that change. There has to be a little bit more, there has to be some accountability there from the facility as well, and the member to say, okay, well, I'm fine with being dropped off at 9:15. I'll call and make sure that my appointment is reflected correctly in the system. That's really the best way to go about that.
Hey, Tiffany, this is Melissa Wintrow. I'm on the phone.
Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Good. I've been on for about 15 minutes. May I make a comment or a question? I've been listening into this discussion about liquidated damages, and I think it is essential, as you said, we want to hold everybody accountable appropriately. It should be a transparent process so people understand it. And my ask would be that it wouldn't create additional work. And if what I just heard George describing, he's trying to help the company, the broker out to get somebody where they need to go. I'm wondering, before he could even respond, I thought, well, that's additional work for the provider and the healthcare person, which they're already frustrated and overworked. There has to be an easier way to manage that, especially if it's being initiated by the broker, that can't you enter that in so they don't have to do that? And how do we continue to make sure any damage that's assessed is transparent and easy to appeal if it's not their error? Because I've heard that for months and months, is that that if there is an error made, sometimes it might not be their error. It might be a computer issue or whatever, and then they're caught then having to do an appeal and taking all the time to try to figure out how to get their bit for that trip. So I'm just asking if we could please make it easier for them and a more efficient system.
So I have to be honest, even though I've received all of the documentation for how to work through the pre-liquidated damage process and the post-liquidated damage process, I have not read through those. It is not uncommon for this to fall onto the providers who are making the claim for payment, to actually have to do that work. But Emilio, can you talk to what it would take for somebody to do that?
And please use your phone if you're not speaking.
I'm sorry, Tiffany, so you're asking what it would take to, I didn't catch your entire question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the process itself, could you just walk us through it at a high level and, what basically the efforts that you anticipate that it will take?
Yeah, so as far as what's involved, it's going to be a matter of looking at your pre-assessment. So as all providers that would have been potentially assessed to liquidated damage and may have received an email from our quality and compliance team that had a breakdown of each trip that could have been potentially assessed at liquidated damage. So what we're going to ask for is documentation to refute the pre-assessment, whether that be in the form of a GPS record, trip log, etc. Something that essentially goes against what we're indicating should have been a liquidated damage. So as far as what type of time that will take I can't quantify that specifically. It's all dependent on what your methods are to run your reports, to run your record keeping, and how you can then present that information to us. So it's just going to be a case-by-case basis depending on each provider, and how many LDs are having to refute. If you don't have any, then great, you're free of having to refute anything. But if you do, it's just going to be dependent on where you have to go to get the information to refute the LD.
I think the other thing I'd like for you to address, Emilio, is the amount of work or effort that goes into creating these reports, and what all you guys do, MTM does, to make sure that you don't put liquidated damage on the provider if you guys aren't fairly confident that it was a provider error. So if you could talk through that, I think that would be helpful for folks too.
Sure. So, and as I've had individual conversations with providers specifically that have reached out to myself or to the respective provider reps, we've already talked about, with those providers specifically on here's what you can do with this situation. So let's say you have the big one that came up, I'll use this as an example, and what we're doing from our end as well was a vendor no-show. So if you go and knock, we know it happens all the time, if you go and knock on someone's door and they're not ready, and you've waited the allotted 10 minutes for them to come out and they still haven't come out, or in their backyard or whatever the case may be, and your driver goes about his day and he takes off, well, now the member is calling us saying, hey, the provider no-showed. So the representative is instructed at the call center to then mark it as a vendor no-show. However, you still have the opportunity then at that point to reach out to your provider rep and say, hey, we showed up. This is not a vendor no-show. We showed up and they weren't ready. At that point, myself, Crystal, or Clint will go into the trip and specifically notate this was not a vendor no-show. This was an issue where the member was not ready. Quality and compliance then goes in. Before they send any type of, even a pre-assessment, they're going in to make sure that there's nothing notated that would refute the LD, because we're not looking to, we're not out there looking for the problems or trying to create an LD. We're looking to make sure that we're just holding people accountable. So they're going to do everything they can from their end to not have to send out the LD, because it's work for everyone, as we've talked about, but we still need it in place to provide a greater quality service. So if you have those instances, let us know, let the help desk know, but there's ways around, there's ways to refute, not ways around, that's not the right term, but there's ways to refute each specific LD to make sure that you're heard before it's assessed. We'll work with each individual provider as those cases come up. Our quality and compliance team is the one that's manning those 2 email inboxes that will give each provider the opportunity to refute those specific damages.
And Representative Wintrow, to get back to your original question, we are always interested in making processes easier, more transparent, and I know there will be some bumps as we first implement this, as folks are kind of learning the process. However, we are always interested in looking at processes and cleaning them up and making them easier for people to use, and we will do that as we move through this time period. So,
can I just put my 1 cent in there on what Emilio said? A simple solution before a customer service rep no-shows a provider or cancels a trip in the portal and they call us after the fact, and then we can't no-show a client. Why can't MTM take the time and let their call center call before they put it down as a no-show? And no-show and we didn't have time to no-show the client, if MTM's call center call us before they cancel the trip in the system, we can no-show it. And then we will have less no-shows because they will have an accurate record of all the no-shows that we get. But currently we get a lot of cancels through MTM because the call taker sits in the East Coast and they think, or somewhere else, and the time zones are not the same. I don't know even if that is causing the problem, but we sometimes get people and then they will, it's past, it's almost close to the pickup time and they will tell us this person is a cancel because they saw us through the window and quickly called MTM. But in fact, they were a no-show. So if MTM have their call centers reach out to the provider, that will cut down on this.
The GSW is going to, Dory's going to respond to that, and then we'll go ahead and move on to our last agenda item so we can keep the call moving forward. Dory?
So Elna, if Ron or Emilio, whoever, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if you are a provider taking a trip and you run into a circumstance like it's just been presented, it would behoove the provider, the driver, to notify MTM at that minute. This person was late, I waited my time, the member is a no-show. That communication in the moment is really, really important between the drivers, their dispatch, their office staff, and MTM to help reduce these things up front.
That is correct, Dory. This is Emilio. So, as we talked about, that's going to be crucial in this is communication to letting us, to let us know. We have providers already that have reached out, for these specific instances that have said, hey, I was there. Here's my side of it, and we will gladly document that in the system to make sure that that's taken into account when these are being reviewed by our quality and compliance.
That will only work if we get a live person on the other side. Our drivers are not connected with the phone systems, and our call centers are extremely busy because of all these messes going on. So there's not always somebody answering the phone, and to send an email is already after the fact because we also don't get always an immediate reply. Sometimes it takes 7 days.
Can I also just add 2 cents about the liquidated damages?
Yeah, go right ahead. One last question or comment.
Well, actually, Sergey from Idaho Transportation would like to put the input because that was my question to add to the agenda, folks.
Today, this is Dory. People are talking over each other. I believe it was Terry who first said she had
I apologize.
a question. Yeah, so I'll be quick. Just a clarification. In order for full transparency, from what I understand with the liquidated damages, is that the Department of Health and Welfare is assessing MTM liquidated damages for the lates and the no-shows. And then MTM is passing that on to the providers. I would just think it would be good for transparency if we knew what MTM was being fined on our behalf being passed on to the providers. We have addressed this at previous meetings and said we'd have access to that information. Is that true?
Terry, this is Tiffany. I don't remember the conversation where we talked about, we would address or show to the providers any liquidated damages that happen between the state and MTM. That is a particular contract that I don't even know what to say. I don't know that we will assess, that we will publish that information to the providers.
Well, if I can.
Yeah, Sarah.
This is Sarah. So once the contract is signed, it is public record.
Right.
And so our schedule of our interaction of what we would charge MTM would be public. To the Tiffany's trying to say is that then once we've assessed that damage on, same process with MTM, here's what we found, through Chancellor reviewed it, I don't know legally if we're able to disclose that interaction. But we would be able to, the schedule for their assessments for their liquidated damages is part of the contract and therefore part of public record.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah.
Hello, Sergey Farley, Vice Medical Transport. I just had a quick question for the MTM team. One of the biggest problems.
Interrupt really quick. Sergey had a question after Terry, then we'll go to you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. It's kind of already been covered, but the most important thing about those liquidated damages is not to shift the responsibility. Yes, I understand everyone's supposed to be responsible for errors or mistakes. However, shifting responsibility, that's the biggest issue. The original question when I asked Dory and Sarah to add this to our meeting agenda item, and Emilio is well familiar with the situation when we got a phone call last minute asking us to transport the client, and we said no due to unavailability. We didn't have anyone to send it, but later we noticed that it's been put to our portal. And when we tried to connect with MTM, the urgent email, they said, so they added this client, even though we said no, like 7 minutes before the appointment. And then we said no. And then they said, well, it's not our responsibility anymore, it's yours. So there was an error. The question is, when the responsibility shifted on me, then I have to go a month later when I get this report card. I had to go and refute that to showing that it was not my error or it was not my responsibility, just because they tried to add that strip last second. So that was my question. Thank you. They're shifting responsibility, from when we're talking about transparency, why we got shifted to us, and we have to go and spend more time to prove this.
Okay, thanks for that comment. One more. Is that Charlie?
Yeah, this is Charlie. One of the problems we identified in the report was the A versus B trips, and A trips that were showing up with a pickup time. So we're picking them up from the facility to take them home. So you guys give us the time we're supposed to be there to pick them up, but it shows up as an A trip, and so we're picking them up when you tell us to, but it's looking like we're late because we're dropping them off at home at some time later than we picked them up, if that makes any sense. So anyway, I'm just curious what's being done because almost all of the ones you sent us were that case. So I'm just curious what's being done in the system to correct that, so that those trips that go from a facility to home are not flagged as being late just because of the way they were built.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie, for that. This is Emilio. So we've talked about that, and we've actually identified that from our end as well after our discussions. So that's currently been escalated up to our IT group to look into that for correction. It was identified that is an area of opportunity there. But again, that's currently sitting with our IT group to correct that.
Marjorie with Green Zone Transportation. I have a quick question. In regards to the ETDs on our RTPs, our reoccurring trips that we're taking Monday through Friday, there's a lot of time errors in those, and I'm just wondering if there's a way to submit an email to MTM and dispute those hours with you guys, because we have members that can't call in for these participants, and that's an issue on our end too as well. I did discuss this already, and I was informed that we had to have the members or the facilities or the offices call in for that. But I know on our end, in regards to liquidation damages, that would help out significantly if we were able to submit an ETD to MTM with the corrected hours from August 1st before the liquidation damages start being assessed. I think that probably would help a lot of the providers out there to be able to review their trips and talk to the members and the facilities to make sure that they have the correct times. And it would also help with MTM not having to do so much legwork. And also, if you have dispatch or having to file a claim or an appeal, I think that would be a lot easier on everybody. So I don't know if that's an option, that we would be able to do that and just submit an Excel sheet with the correct times next to the times that MTM has.
MTM, so this is a good transition. So our next agenda item is an update on EPDs. Those are out in 8 days. So maybe you'd like to take the opportunity to provide an update on this topic and address that question.
Sure. So regarding the EPD update, with them being 8 days out, again, that's similar to the other issue we discussed. So it's been presented to, it's been submitted to our IT group for review. Right now, it's not at the top of the list as a priority, but it will. It's something that's in the works. It's something that's been submitted for review to see what can be done to have those trips drop further as opposed to the 8 day time frame that it is currently. In regards to your question there, Marjorie, so that responsibility and that validation does lie with the facility and the participant to ensure that those times are correct in the system. The issue that would be presented if you were to send us a spreadsheet with corrected times is that at that point we have to hear from the facility to remain HIPAA compliant as well, with someone that's authorized on behalf of the participant or the member to call us to make that change. So while an example, if we were to take that spreadsheet and then update it, now we have a mom or a parent or facility calling us saying, hey, that's not correct. Now we're out of compliance as well from our end because we made that change without getting that validation from the facility. So I understand where you're coming from, and I understand what you're saying, but that absolutely has to come from the facility or the member.
So, can I just say something about this is Al now.
Can we allow her to follow up on her question? Go ahead.
The clients don't know those things are wrong, Emilio. That is causing a lot of calling back to the clients and calling back and forth, because sometimes the clients call in and it still doesn't get corrected. And then we call them again, they call back in. And there was many times that they told us, MTM told us that they had system problems. So if we send a list, wouldn't it be good for MTM just to follow up on that and call the facility, call the client, and make sure that this is what it needs to be? And then also on the trips that get switched around, when you have 8 trips, sometimes it's switched on our address list and on our sign sheets, and then it looked like we were late. And the other thing that's causing a problem on this trips is that you have return times for will calls as 11:59 a.m. That is something that is serious, because it looks like, and that makes a mess with our scheduling, because it looks like that we don't know what's going on there.
Thanks, Elna. Have you presented those examples already to us that you're talking about?
No, I haven't. I haven't done it, Emilio. It's just another administrative thing that we need to do. We probably should do that so that you can see it and work on it.
Right. Yeah. That's what I was gonna say, is that we have to be able to see what the issues are so we can look for solutions. Right. As we've had issues presented to us specifically around this, as Charlie was talking about, with the A legs with B legs not showing as they should, we take that up and then identify it and say, okay, this is an issue that needs attention. So as you present those and submit those to us, we take all of those concerns and we take all of those issues that you present to us up to see what we can do to remedy that. But if we don't know about it, we can't try to affect that change.
This is
Can
Margaret
you
with
fix that before you do the LD damages? Start assessing, just fix all these problems that the provider has.
Marjorie, we'll come back to your question. I know you had a follow-up on your original, so I'm hanging on to that.
Yeah, in regards to that, I don't mean that as far as the time frame and when LDs are going to go into effect, that timeline is in place, and that's not changing at this time.
This is Jessica with Wilderness Shuttle. Can I say something?
One moment. Marjorie had a follow-up to her last question. Please go ahead.
Thanks. So one of the things that I just heard from MTM, Amelia, I believe that was you that was talking in regards to the ETDs. But one of my questions is in regards to HIPAA. You were talking about HIPAA and having to contact the members of the facilities or the offices calling in regards to a HIPAA violation. Is there any possible way that we can do an updated ETD with a signature that we stated and talked to the member? I mean, I know there's legal contracts that they can sign and they can sign off stating that that is the correct time. Would you guys accept a document like that? And then I have one other question to add to that as well. I ran the ETD for our report for Monday, and we went ahead and over the weekend we had 2 trips that were in there. I would be charged $25 each for those trips. So, in other words, I'm going to be getting charged if liquidation damages were active now. I'd be charged $100 today for trips that I did not approve. We are closed Saturday and Sunday. And so there's no time to turn those back. Even if I ran the report later Friday, those are put in our portal over the weekend. So I think that there's another issue that needs to be addressed too as well in regards to hours of operation. We get phone calls still on Saturday and Sunday to transport members. There's nobody to be able to answer the phone. And somehow they're still getting put in our portal. So we're not open till 7 a.m. in the morning. We're getting calls at 5 a.m. in the morning. These kind of things, I think everybody straight across the board, all the providers are, probably having these issues. So I think that something needs to be addressed within the system that MTM has in regards to hours of operations. And then also, I think we need to see an MTM portal when they're putting those in. I can see when the member scheduled the appointment, but I can't see when MTM put it in my portal. I only know that as per my ETDs that I'm running. So there's actually 2 questions there. First being the ETD with the HIPAA violation that you're saying, can the members sign off on those hours so that I can just create one sheet to send into MTM so that way I don't have to worry about my RTPs and being docked liquidation damages. The second being in regards to addressing MTM's portal with being able to see over the weekend when the call center is putting these trips into our portal, because that's an issue that I have. I can't dispute something like that for liquidation damages then.
Okay, I'm going to allow MTM to respond to that in just a moment. I'm going to just to keep order. After that response, we go to Jessica, and I'll check by regions of the state if there's questions or comments, so that we're not continuing to speak over each other. So MTM, go ahead, and then we'll go to Jessica.
So Marjorie, in regards to your first question regarding getting signatures, that's something that we can certainly take back to our legal team for review to see if that's a possibility. I wouldn't be able to tell you offhand, but we can certainly have that reviewed by our legal department to see what our options are there. In regards to hours of operation, we want to make sure that we have those correct in the system, right? So if there's an issue that you're seeing, that you're getting a lot of calls at times that you're not operating, we need to know about that so we can then make that modification within the system to ensure that your hours of operation are accurately represented there. In terms of what you're saying, that you would be assessed an LD for a trip that was input into your portal on hours that you don't operate, again, those are things that we have to take into consideration when we're talking about LDs, right? So that's something that we would look at, but then there's an opportunity to refute that and say, well, these are not my hours of operation. I don't work on Saturdays and Sundays, yet these were put in for Saturday and Sunday, or whatever the case is. That's something that we would have to take into consideration at that point as a repeal for the LD.
Great, thank you. Jessica.
I just want to say that I'm fair with the liquidated damages. I understand why those are in place and that they're to hold us accountable. But like I've talked with Emilio, all these things are tied in together. So with the trip, times wrong on the trips, if we're supposed to ask members to call in and get those updated through MTM, I feel like MTM, before you can assess liquidated damages, you have to be able to fix your issues with the RTDs or the RTP department, because that's where a lot of trouble is coming in. I can't ask someone to call in and update that when I know that they've already called in 3 or 4 times to get their reoccurring trips extended or renewed. That's just silly. If we can't, it all ties in together. If you can't fix one thing, but yet you want to charge us over here, like what can be done to fix that on your end to make it easier for us to want to have members call in?
Yeah, I mean, Jessica, in regards to that, and I know that we've talked about it, as far as what can be done from our end, it's just continuing to look at those instances and those cases, as we've talked about, but you know, the responsibility still lies on the facilities members to ensure that the times are correct. Of course, we take the information that we get from the call taker or from the person that's calling in the trip to put into the system. So I understand there's those instances where the trip information is wrong, or if it didn't get updated, whatever the case may be. But we just need to know about those so we can make those corrections.
Okay, we're going to go to, we'll take a few more questions. At this point, we've gone through our agenda items, so this is to be any additional questions or comments that have yet to be addressed. And again, I'd say yet to be addressed, meaning if this comment has been shared, it's been captured in the notes, so it's not necessary to repeat input that's already been shared by yourself or by somebody else. So anybody from region 1 through 4, so the western half of the state, any additional questions or comments?
When will the marketplace be up and running in full capacity again? Because we've picked up a lot of work there. And also, when MTM came in, they said that if we have a low rate of complaints and stuff against us, it will help us to get more work. Now, we have been down probably still 25% on trips. And I have reached out to Emilio specifically and talked to him, and he said he'll look into it. But we have not seen an increase in our work. So is that still true, that you will get more work on the quality of your work, or what's going on?
So to answer those questions, as far as Marketplace goes, Marketplace is currently working as intended. There is additional staff that was added to both the dispatch and short notice team to ensure that trips are being worked from their end. And then what's in Marketplace is then left for providers to pick up at that point. But there should have been an increase in calls made out to providers specifically. You know, I've heard from many of you that have indicated, yes, I'm getting more calls to take these trips because they're being worked in real time by our short notice team. In regards to your other question, as far as volume goes, as you know, Eleanor, we can't guarantee volume. We can only present you the volume that's called in or that's requested. So if trips are not being, requested or whatever the case may be, it's difficult for us to create that volume. So as far as trips that are out there, they're presented to all providers in a manner that's looking at the region that you operate in, your capacity, cost. Those are all factors that are taken into account when trips are called in. So it's just a matter of where the trips land. There's not anybody specifically looking at it and saying, well, we need to give this provider this many trips and that provider that many trips when they're being called in. They land where they land, specific to those points there.
Thank you. So again, Western Idaho, any other new questions or comments that have yet to been shared or
Slava Pusina, the transportation company. Just really quickly, a question about rate increase. So are we going to see that, maybe I missed it, do we see the rate increase as of July 1st? And if it's not, which days is exactly going to take place? And when each individual provider will find out by how much his increase is affected, how much the company is affected?
So before we'll go to Department of Health and Welfare to help respond to that question. But again, we try to keep these discussions to different regions of the state so we know what part of the state you're in, and that'll help us from speaking over each other. Go ahead, Ed.
So Slava, we did talk briefly about this earlier, but the state and MTM are committed to making sure that rate increase is effective July 1st. Ron, can you share any information about updated contract terms or anything that will be coming out and the type of turnaround that you need in order to preserve that July 1st implementation date for us?
Sure. So within the next day or so, you will be receiving an updated Schedule A. That updated Schedule A is going to reflect the percentage that each transportation provider is going to receive. That number is exactly the same for all of our transportation providers, both sole source and your traditional NEMT provider.